Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. I'm currently underway on a 2400 challenge for all healers. I've already completed Discipline Priest, Holy Priest, and Resto Shaman. And in today's guide, I'm going to be giving you a quick start Holy Priest guide, running you through some of the most important concepts for the class so you can start making sure that you're doing them and not losing out on rating and some possible rewards because you are missing out on the foundation and the fundamentals of the specialization, because that's really going to be the core that gets you the success that you need to get in PvP. So at the start of a game, you want to make sure that you've got Prayer of Mending basically used on cooldown and renew up on any potential targets. It is really important to get Palm pressed as many times as possible because every time it bounces, it's going to be increasing our healing. I really like using a stun early on anybody that comes close when I've got a caster on my team and dumping Holy Fire, Mind Games, and doing as much damage to them as possible. This way it gives a lot of room for your caster at the beginning of the game to do a lot of damage. So protecting them and stopping melee from getting close to them with Chastise and doing damage is good. Here I tried to pre-fade the coil. I anticipated because there was a Curse of Havoc up. We didn't hit the timing, unfortunately. Now we've got pressure onto the Warlock, and I just immediately pop all of my damage. We win the round almost immediately. This is using the instant cast Holy Fire activation. You're going to want to make sure that you're using this when you see enemies starting to get low. It's going to make your next 3 Holy Fires instant, and they're going to rip out a ton of damage. Now you can sometimes combine this with Apotheosis, so that it's going to double dip and give you Chastise reset, but that would be a really aggressive play. Winning that round right there is kind of like almost like a throwaway in that sense, but it's to show kind of the value of the offensive potential of Holy Priest. You really do want to make sure you're keeping Holy Fire dot up basically on the kill target as much as possible, and then dumping in the Blaze triple Holy Fires when you see that your allies are getting a lot of damage onto the board. It's going to be really important. So the game's going to start again. This one likely going to be a little bit longer. Get Palm bouncing as much as possible. Get Renew up onto your target. If you're really struggling to not sure what you need to do, here you can see the Chastise right at the start of the game. Holy Fire, Mind Games, just immediate pressure onto the melee DPS. Shadow Word Pain, Palm on cooldown. Keep Renew up. Stay far away. Don't try and get Death Grip. Try and avoid CC with Shadow Word Death and with Greater Fade. I use my Power Infusion very early as well onto my allies to support. We grip our Warlock away from the Death Knight. We don't want them stacking up here with the Windwalker. We see the Paladin coming in, so we use our Fade, and we manage to immune the Hammer of Justice. We can always use our Spirit of Redemption as well. Usually I like using Spirit of Redemption when a Death Knight uses Abomination's Limb or when opponents use their 2-minute cooldowns. Going just immune to all CC during this time and guaranteeing that you get your heals is a really good way to just make sure that they survive. But if you're not getting Death Gripped in and you're not getting stunned, it's not something that is necessarily 100% mandatory. Here you can see jumping into the Spirit of Redemption and using Divine Hymn, which I do have Seraphic Crescendo against 2-minute classes like Death Knights and Boomkins. I think it's really good. It just, during Angel Form, you get to stack up this massive healing buff towards your whole team. And I've kept up renews throughout all of this. We come out of the Angel form. We get crowd controlled somewhat immediately. I see pressure on the Shadow Priest. I'm tossing out my Shadow Fiend. I see crowd control on the healer. So my allies are connecting, and I see crowd control on the healer. I want to put a Shadow Fiend out for pressure. I see damage coming through with Empowered Rune Weapon from the Death Knight. So we've activated our Guardian Spirit here to amplify healing onto the Warlock. And then we've split up our Serenities onto the Monk, who is now taking a bit of the chunk of damage at this point. We've used our Apotheosis. This is going to reset our Chastise, allow us to stun. Imperial Blaze. We're dumping 3 Holy Fires onto the Holy Priest. As soon as you've got any time where you're comfy, you've survived the opener, you're not taking any damage, you need to get damage as much as possible. It's like one of the main advantages of the class is that Holy Fire just hits so hard and that you've got this range stun. Now after that I use Symbols. Usually you want Symbols to reset a cooldown like on any resolve. This had not been used, but sometimes you don't get a lot of free time. Now here's Crypt Fever. This is a really important mechanic to notice in the Death Knight. You need to stop direct healing when that debuff is up. As soon as it's over, then use your emergency heals and recover. If you keep spamming into that debuff that was here just a moment ago, you're going to end up killing your DPS. And that's a really common mistake that I see healers making against Death Knights. They spam heal into Crypt Fever. Here we've got Stun up. We want to send that as soon as possible. Stun into Holy Fire. This is enabling our Warlock to get a bit of cast out, trying to bait a Trinket. We're casting Flash Heals, staying back and away from the Shadow Priest, trying to avoid crowd control, purge out Blessing and Protections when you can see them. Really important, especially when you got physical damage dealers like a Windwalker in this instance. Now we've used our Ending Resolve while I'm crowd controlled. healed. Of course, this wasn't, communicated. This is a solo shuffle, but anytime your healer is CC'd, it's a good idea to think about using a personal defensive. We get silenced out of this. We're going to use our power word life anytime a target gets critically low. Use as much instant healing as possible. We end up using our trinket and our life swap. Bit of an overkill, honestly, here to use the Guardian Spirit on top of the life swap because the damage had pretty much stopped at that point. This is honestly maybe just a panic moment for me. And this is something that you're probably doing as well, is panic and overlapping a lot of cooldowns. If they had cooldowns running, like a void form or something like that, then maybe using Guardian Angel there would have been wise to stack. But now I'm basically down to cooldown. Priest is moving at me. I got to move away. I don't want to get CC'd. I'm doing damage to the priest, pressuring them, trying to get away from them. Anytime people run at you, you just run away and you just sit max distance, do as much damage as possible. And look, we baited them into a really bad position. Our Warlock's now got a fear onto the Paladin. We tried gripping here, but it looks like my Warlock ended up getting rooted. Really important to pay attention if your target is rooted before you life grip, because that's going to be a common way to end up losing a round. And because we pulled the Shadow Priest so far away from the Paladin, we got them into a bad position, baited him, and were able to take him down. So I like playing a really neutral game on my Holy Priest, getting stuns, doing damage, and maximizing my efficiency and winning throughout this, and baiting opponents into bad positions, and then trying to fade their crowd control when they're chasing me. And this has been what has led to most of my success throughout this. And the basic fundamentals are just making sure that Prayer Many is on cooldown, Renew is up on your target. If you're struggling for instant heals, Power Word Shield is a really good kind of fallback as an instant cast, as well as Sanctify. I usually save this for emergency moments. I don't like using Sanctify right away, although you do normally want to get one Sanctify charge and one Serenity charge on cooldown, so that way they're refreshing and you're working towards their Holy Word cooldowns. Now I've got a double caster against double melee. Immediately we just stun the melee that gets close, dump a Holy Fire, dump a Mind Games, dump a Shadow Word Pain, whatever it takes. As much damage as possible. I want to force a cooldown out from them or force them to run away to get distance from my casters. And I'm staying far away from the death grip, trying to anticipate it, gripping the Warlock then away. We want to pull the Paladin into the middle of the map. This does get me stunned though, so we're going to use Guardian Angel. Prayer of Mending's bouncing back and forth. The Serenity charge tops them off. They swap to me. Could be in trouble, and again, using Abomination's Limb and using Serenity, jumping into Angel form here, if you're feeling too uncomfortable, is going to be a wise move, but I'm just using my Holy Word Serenities instead, and it seems like I'm not taking too much damage. We Apotheosis, reset the stun, send that bad boy back onto the Death Knight. Make sure that your Serenities have been used so that when you Apotheosis, you get an extra charge of it. This is going to be a really common mistake. You Apotheosis right away in a panic, but you need to make sure Serenity is on cooldown and Holy Word Sanctify is on cooldown so that you get them reset, as well as Chastise. That's like the ideal situation, is you have all three of those reset. Now we're max range. We're just casting with Flash Heal because we've got Apotheosis up, trying to reset our Serenity as much as possible, sending in Prayer of Mendings. Now we've run out of instant heal, so we're using Sanctify, we're using Renew, and we're going to have to bank on Power Word Life whenever our Warlock gets low. We're really getting pressured. So we end up using Void Shift here on top of ending Resolve. It was just a lot of damage coming in. You got to measure that, especially when you're running out of Holy Word Serenities, because that's your main mechanic. If you feel like you're going to get crowd control or get death gripped in or something like that, probably better to use Life Swap if Power Word Life is not enough, but you go through that failsafe first. Here I see a silence on the Paladin, but I got gripped in. I don't want to get crowd controlled right now, so I'm jumping into the Spirit of Redemption, and I'll use that Seraphic Crescendo to get a massive heal stack up onto everybody. They're going to feel really comfortable. We've got the Paladin into a fear. They're all down at half HP. We're just keeping our Renews up, keeping our palms up. Now, if you're not getting attacked, this is kind of a secret tech thing you can do. You can Shadow or Death to bounce palm off yourself. So if you're in the back and only your ally is taking damage and you need a palm to bounce, if palm's on you like it is right here, if I wasn't dotted, I could Shadow or Death and bounce it to my Warlock and get a little bit of an extra instant heal. So be aware of that. Here's Crypt Fever, main mechanic you're going to need to pay attention to. Wait for it to fall off before you direct heal. You can bounce palm off your allies to heal the target. Indirect healing won't refresh it, just direct healing to the target will. So just be very careful of that. You can also use Power Word Shield, I believe, because it doesn't heal, it just absorbs and it won't refresh Crypt Fever. Here we're gripping the Warlock, trying to get distance from the Death Knight. Then we're going to pull away from where we just gripped him because we don't want to be on top of him with a Windwalker. We're using Shadow Word Pain whenever we can squeeze in an extra free global. We've got Shadow Word Pains onto the DK and the Windwalker. This class is really about trying to squeeze in as much globals as you can for damage. We get critically low here. We see Void Shift come through for the Shadow Priest, Crypt Fever up onto the Warlock here, and we actually refreshed it with a Renew. So this is very dangerous. You can see I'm casting Mind Games instead of healing, trying to redirect damage into healing. Paladin dispels. We go for the Imperial Blaze and we dump Holy Fires and go for damage. And it was a really tight finish. I like focusing on doing damage and using cooldowns to keep my team healthy, to be able to get ahead in solo shuffle, because that's going to be your main advantage, and your main way to win is just using cooldowns to stay ahead, and then pumping out as much damage, getting your stuns on cooldown as much as possible, power infusing your allies very soon. Make sure that you're power infusing them, because if you're not, you're losing out on a huge fundamental of the class, that's going to be really tough for you to be able to make it through. Your failsafe, like your fallback cooldown, is always Trinket Void Shift. I almost always save Trinket. I never just Trinket randomly. It's a Trinket Void Shift, to be able to save your allies. And you can pre-angel, pre-fade if you see enemies running at you and you want to try and avoid crowd control to make it as annoying as possible. And those are kind of the main concepts that you're going to want to be implementing for Holy Priest, in order to start having success. Other than that, the build will be in the description down below. If you'd like to follow me on my 2400 challenge journey, then make sure to check out my stream. That's in the description as well, and follow me there. Other than that, thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one.